Namaste and in Lak'ech, and welcome to this episode of One World in a New World. I'm your host, Zen Benefiel, and as always, please do like, subscribe, share. It's important to all of us to share these conversations because they matter so much. Also, I invite you to visit planetaryscitizens.net and download the free book called Planetary Citizens Awakening the Heart of Humanity. It's my 43rd book, and it encapsulates the efforts of planetary citizens. I know you'll love it. It's a free download. So thank you so much. Now, this week's guest is Gill Tiney. She is the founder and collaborator coordinator of Collaboration Global. She is also an author, and she's written several books. These are all business oriented. Interesting woman because she has combined the feel good stuff with the business side of things in order to get people to work together better. And so those books are Stepping Up from Desperation to Inspiration, published in 2010, Making of a Movement, speaking of Collaboration Global, in 2015, and Together We Can Do Something Wonderful. What a great title. That was published in 2023, and it outlines the how-tos of how to collaborate. So stick around. We're going to have a great apocalyptic chat. I guarantee you'll love it. We'll be right back. Gill, it is so great to have you here. It was wonderful to be part of your Collaboration Global meeting recently and being able to share the precepts of planetary citizenship and what it means in collaboration with everyone. So thank you very much for the work you're doing, the efforts you've made, the books you've written, and the inspiration that you give to many.
Well, thank you so much, Zen. It's an absolute joy to be here. And as you can hear from my accent, I'm not a US girl, so it's not many people I'd stayed past my bedtime to be here
Yeah.
with you
Well, thank you
today.
so much for staying up. And I know when we get older, we'd like to go to bed earlier. And so maybe this will provide some liminal space, right? That has a
Yeah,
very interesting conversation that ensues.
it's a
Um,
different atmosphere, isn't it, when it's
yeah,
late at
yeah. So
night?
that
Yeah.
opens the door to the inner and outer stuff. And Rich is really what our conversation is about.
Mm,
We're bereft of talking about the inner relationships that we have. And I say relationships because there's many.
yeah.
And we don't talk about it because they're so weird and so different that we think other people are going to think we're crazy. And oftentimes, if we share with someone that doesn't have a similar experience or understanding, they will edify that we are crazy or insane or something like that. Granted, I was institutionalized at 19 for that. And
Mm,
I learned that, there are ways to come out of that too. You learn how to talk to others and they want in the way they want to hear,
yeah.
regardless of whether, you want to speak or anything like that. So it was an interesting insight into that world. Well, in your world, these inner conversations and this undeniable revelatory experience at times, when you feel that connection that's way beyond the physical, how did
Mhm.
that first happen with you? And what was that like? And the thoughts, the emotions, and the reflections that you got at the time.
Yeah. Um, just to go back to your earlier point of when you talk to other people about stuff that's happened to you, you get the old crazy vibe and people take a step away. What I found at Collaboration Global, because we encourage a culture where there is no judgment or shame or guilt or
Hmm.
right or wrong, we often have conversations that other people don't normally have. And on the odd occasion, I will throw in the bomb and go, right, okay, who's seen a ghost then? Or what experience have you had? And you expect in a room of about, I don't know, 10, 12 people that maybe two are going to relish telling the story of the
Right.
paranormal or whatever's gone on. But every single time we've done it, every single person has had an experience to share. It's
Isn't that
very,
cool?
very common, but
Right.
we just don't, we're not brave enough in polite society to go, come on then, let's share our stuff. I mean, we've had some amazing conversations about being abducted by aliens and all the experiences of the paranormal, but also
Well,
the
that's why
faith.
I felt so at home.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, it's not a taboo subject, and I think that's where a lot of
Right.
places it can be
Well,
seen
you
as,
guys have got Stonehenge and all that, all the different
oh,
things, and
so
what is
much,
it, Glastonbury, where they had the crop circle appear that was the same as what was on Voyager, only it had
so
um,
much,
different
yeah.
alien being and the configuration of their world population and things like that, which is fascinating. Um, it just was really wonderful to have those kinds of things,
Mm,
right? To have
mm,
those kinds
so much.
of opportunities to learn and grow and open your mind to things that are
Exactly. It's
more
like once
real
you,
than what you might imagine.
yes, and what when you are open to those things, you see them more and more. If you're kind of closed off to them, oh, there's no such thing as a ghost. It's like, well, just because you haven't seen one, it doesn't mean to say, and we
Of
don't know.
course.
And
Yeah.
I think it's arrogance to say, um, there is no other side to the universe. There is no parallels, or there is no time continuum, or whatever, quantum physics, or whatever you want to go into. For somebody to say it does not exist is like, wow, that's arrogance in my book. So I'm very curious and open to hear everyone's experiences, and everyone has different experiences and takes them from a different time. So I think for me, one of the first experiences I had, um, which wasn't necessarily personal to me. I'm just trying to think of so many different ones you can think about.
Oh, yeah, the litany, right? Make it as
So
personal as you can to begin with, and then let's
yeah,
explore your
so
observation of others.
when I had my first daughter, I was very adamant that I wanted to thank God, whatever was out there. I had no faith as such. Been very loosely brought up as a Christian, but we didn't go and practice it. And so I wanted to get
I
involved with
ha
the church
Sure.
and to get her christened, to say thank you to whatever being was out there. And my husband didn't want to be a hypocrite and have a christening and then not go to church. And I was like, oh, do we have to? Do we have to? But
Well, you can dip your toe in the water. You don't have to dive in, right?
well, we ended up diving in, to be fair, because it felt natural and it felt right. And we were luckily enough in a church that was very open
Hmm.
to the Holy Spirit
Yeah,
and the
you bring
manifestation.
up a great point. It felt natural and right, and at least for a time, right? Everything's temporary and transitory.
Oh,
For
absolutely.
that period, it just felt like the right thing to do. So you followed it. That's an honoring, I think.
Yes, exactly. And if it hadn't felt right, or if I'd felt uncomfortable, I wouldn't have carried on doing it. But one
Sure.
of the things that we did, because we got more and more involved with the church, is that I became part of what they call the prayer ministry. So one time they had this churches getting together, and there's a beautiful cathedral at St Albans, ancient. I think it was built in like 900 AD, so it's a
Mm,
pretty old,
a lot of history.
cathedral. And at any of these gatherings, there's a lot of choirs singing. There's a lot of, the vicars, the preachers come together and they preach.
Hmm.
And there's a ministry for healing. So people that are in the prayer ministry, I have felt there is a calling from God for them to pray and heal people. And I felt one of those people. So I like put my hand up going, yeah, go on, I'll do that. That sounds like fun. And the prayer ministry people were taken down into the crypt. So basically, the part of the church underneath the church where all the very important people of the past have been buried.
Hmm.
So you go down and instantly you feel it's not only is it very chilly, but there is an aura, there is a feeling about it.
Sure.
Now, at that point, I was relatively new in my journey, and I had heard that when the Holy Spirit comes upon some people, they get the gifts. You get various gifts: the gift of healing, the gifts of tongues, that all these
Speaking
different
in
gifts.
tongues and all that kind of stuff. Right.
Exactly. But I'd never heard it at that point, what it sounded like when somebody speaks or sings in tongues. So there's so many different churches. So we had about 30 different people in the crypt that were going to pray before the service so that after the service, when people came up for prayer for healing, we'd already prepared ourselves. We were
Hmm.
ready. And as I said, about 30 people in the room, and I was at one end. I'd kind of squidged into the end, and there were people at the other end. And I could hear this as I'm sort of just sitting there praying. It's very beautiful. It's very, the whole space felt very, very special. And I could hear this strange noise coming from over there at the other end where the sort of other people were sitting. And it was like a rush through, a rush through, and I could feel it and I could hear it, and it was getting louder and louder. And it was music, but it wasn't music. And it was speaking, but it wasn't speaking. And I kind of went, huh, this is tongues, that I can hear people praying in tongues. And as I can hear this praying, which was became singing, which was the most beautiful singing I'd ever heard, I was aware that my mouth was open and something was coming out of my mouth. I wasn't doing it. I definitely wasn't doing it, but I could hear things coming out of
You
my
weren't,
mouth.
but you were. So there's that edification of several points of perspective that becomes available: the participant, the observer, and then the giver.
Yeah, exactly. And that has always been, it's like the trilogy, isn't it? And at a later
Mhm.
time when after this event that had happened and I was just like blown away by it.
Oh, those
um
trinitized fractals are everywhere.
yeah, exactly. And so another time when we were praying in a smaller group, I ended up praying in Hebrew. I don't speak Hebrew. Somebody else translated what it was and said, this is what you've just said, even though they didn't speak Hebrew. So somebody's going to be looking at that going, yeah, they're just making it up. But somebody also in the back of the room that we didn't know was there quietly stood up and said, I speak Hebrew. And this is, and what she said is what you said that she said. And I confirmed that that's what, and again, it didn't come out of my mouth, but it came out of my mouth. And
You know,
so,
the setup and delivery, the confirmation are those things that happen in those. I really, I was with a small group right after 9/11. I lived in a canyon in Pacific Palisades, just outside LA,
mm,
and we had gathered to open a portal and be helpful. I'll just leave it at that. And
mm,
afterwards, one of the things that happened with me, I'd never done this before, was I spoke in a half a dozen different languages. Didn't recognize any of them, but I could hear the words.
yeah,
It was just bizarre. And yet the intention of them were so reverent and honoring and connecting of whatever worlds that I was speaking to and from.
yeah, yeah. It's not done for no reason. It's like there's a purpose there, and the
Hmm.
purpose, we don't always know what the purpose is, but in after the event, and 2 or 3 weeks later you find out, you join the dots and you're like, oh,
Right.
that's
Well,
why
then you've
that.
got so let's go into physics for just a moment. Quantum entanglement, right?
Mm,
Words have power, they have vibration. Whether you understand them or not, they're still there. They go out into I call it the thoughtmosphere, and they ripple,
yeah.
and they land on who is necessary for them to hear. That's a theory, but apparently so, because I've had enough instances where things have happened and then that ripple ends up coming back as a recognition that, oh yeah, that did happen.
Mm, yeah.
Interesting
It's
thing. So
interesting. Mm,
in that wave of celebration, I guess, for lack of better, because you really are outside and inside and all around simultaneously, because it's that experience of oneness,
mm,
right? Would you
mm.
describe it as potentially that?
Yeah, I mean, it's like a set of dominoes. You could almost see it coming through and getting closer and closer and closer to you. And I've had that experience in other areas as well, where again in prayer ministry, and not all of my experiences are through the church, but a lot of them because the church was very open. It was called Catching the Fire. This
Mm,
whole ministry was to share what we were experiencing. And so we would get together as a group, and there was probably a dozen of us. And at one point, one of the ladies just started laughing, and nothing had happened. Nobody had said anything funny. She just started getting the giggles and she couldn't help herself. And we're like, what's going on with her? What's happening? Oh, honestly, she's off again. She was a lovely, funny lady, but there was nothing that had been said. We literally sat there to start praying. We didn't know what the prayer was going to be needed for, what it was about, but she started laughing and she could not stop. And then it rippled.
And
And
no
it
silly Simon involved either.
No, I mean it was just you couldn't, there was no reason, rhyme or reason for it. But what was really interesting is that all of us caught it. And it was so, I don't know if you remember when you were a kid and you laughed so much, you're like, oh, don't make me laugh anymore, my side hurts. Oh, please,
Oh
I just
yeah,
can't laugh
absolutely.
anymore. It
Absolutely.
hurts.
Laugh till you cry, your sides hurt, you run out of breath. Right?
Rolling on the floor,
Yeah,
laughing.
yeah.
That there was like a dozen people were doing that. And then we all stopped. We got very sensible. We're like, where did that come from? Honestly, that was ridiculous. I feel great now. This is amazing. And then somebody else started off over there and it came all the way back again. And it was like, oh, so also that time that felt like we'd been laughing for maybe 5-10 minutes was an hour and a half. And we were like, okay, I think our job is done now. We're all cheered up. We'll go home. We didn't know
Mm.
what it was for, but it was just elation,
Well, yeah,
pure
it was a
elation.
direct experience of something beyond your comprehension and still undeniable.
Yeah,
That's I think the evidence. Your belief system might not be able to handle what's happening. That doesn't change it not it's happening,
yeah. You can't
right?
use that. You can't use
Nah,
logic or, it's just got to be from the heart. And there were
from the
so
heart and the
many,
gut,
yeah,
right? The
exactly.
indigenous say that we actually have a three brain system. The gut first that feels the vibration,
Hmm.
right? And now we know from science there's more neurosensors in the gut than there are in the head.
Yeah.
So we sense first, then we figure out, is it resonant or not? That's the
Hmm.
Taoist thing. Is it desirable or undesirable? And then
Yeah.
once you have that, then you've got better information that you can transfer up to the supercomputer that then takes it and makes choices
Yes.
with informed information as opposed to just arbitrary projections.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you can send yourself crazy if you just be doing all the thinking and not the whole, as you say, the whole
Sure.
self.
Well, we don't know how to be quiet, right? Jesus said, go into your closet and pray. Well, that doesn't mean go into your pray and then start talking to yourself. It means to
Mm,
shut up and listen to the answers,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And, neuroscientists say we have 70,000 thoughts a day, right? Well, how do
Mm,
you quiet yourself with that many thoughts? How do you discipline and manage your mind so that you can be aware and observant and tone it down,
mm,
right?
mm.
Because of those 70,000 thoughts, how many of them are self-deprecating for most of
Oh
us?
my goodness. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So if we eliminate those, that's two-thirds, three-quarters, maybe even seven-eighths of, and of course, those are American terms. I don't know how to go with
I'm
metrics.
with you. I'm with you
Right,
on that. I'm old enough to know what that's all about.
right, right. So, the thing is that when we learn about those thoughts, we can manage them better.
Yeah.
We've got to have that awareness and be willing to, otherwise, we're just out of control.
Yeah.
So how did that affect your next phase? Now, I'm going to make an assumption that you were in your mid 20s at the time.
Late 20s, early
Okay.
30s. Yeah.
Um, so in that, do you remember anything prior to when you were a younger girl, other than laughing, right, and rolling around on the floor? Was there something else that you could lock into, or maybe that has just appeared in your mind now that I mentioned it?
Well, one of my earliest memories was apparently when I was 9 months old. And I have a very definite memory of sitting in a buggy with the family there on the beach. And I've
Mm-hmm.
described them all to my mum, and who was there and who was saying what. And so was sitting, Uncle George was sitting to my left, and Auntie Lil was over there, and then Dad was down there, and then my sister. And I'm describing it all. My mum's like, you must have seen a photograph. You can't remember that. That's ridiculous. And I said, well, did we go to the beach? Yes, of course we did. We went to the beach a lot. You probably remember it when you were much older. And I said, so is there a photograph of, well, it is somewhere, it's somewhere, but you must have seen it. I've never to this day seen that photograph, but I do
That,
remember distinctly this kind of image of the family gathered around.
and that's so indicative of parents that have disconnected and become programmed, if you will,
Mm,
however that it has happened, to deny what's possible, right? You offer something that you know to be true. It's your direct
mm,
experience. You have the memory and you're sharing it, and yet it's
mm,
denied. Now,
mm,
I also wonder if this process we're in of globally learning how to globally collaborate is also part of remembering that we were all unified first before coming here. And
mm,
now we need to figure that out, learn how to love and be loved appropriately, right? And step into that energy rather than the fear of rejection of others
mm.
or being wrong or whatever fear is, appropriate.
Well, there's been a TV program in the UK recently, and for the life of me, I can't remember the name of it. It's a documentary about humans. It might be called Humans. And what they were saying, which has fascinated me, is that everyone's wondered why Neanderthals were the ones that survived, and the others. No, hang on, it's the other way around. Anyway, there were different varieties of humans, weren't there? And some survived and some didn't. And you would think that the bigger humans would have been the ones that survived, i.e., the survival of the fittest. But it turned out that the ones that survived were the ones that collaborated.
Exactly. And they're the ones who always do.
Mm,
Right? It's not the most powerful. It is those that learn how to work with others
exactly.
to achieve
And
things, even with the power.
accommodate. Yeah, exactly. And then society over time decided it was easier to control the masses by divide and conquer. And that's what we have been
Well, look what the church did.
experiencing.
I go back to them, how many people believe that women came from
Mm,
Adam's rib, right?
mm,
And that just doesn't make sense, right? There's no talk about Lilith or Adam getting kicked out of the garden because he was being an asshole.
mm,
Right. So, and yet those stories are there when you look deep enough. So what we can see is that initially women were subjugated by the patriarch.
mm, mm,
Why would they do that?
mm.
Right? Now it's like, wait a minute, there's the divine feminine, there's the divine masculine. We have both of those energies in us
Yeah.
and they play out differently. And yet they're part of what creates our wholeness because one side's empathetic and the other one is intellectual. And those two then merge in some kind of fashion that allows, I think Mahaley said it best in flow,
Mm,
right? And it truly is the psychology of optimal experience. What's flow? How do we attain it? Where do we find that place in ourselves that we can acquiesce to it? So,
yeah.
how did you learn to be comfortable in the unknown?
Um, I think having been born in the East End of London, it was quite common for people to consult a medium for their loved ones that had died or what's happening in the future. Or there were a lot of gypsies around who would knock on the door and cross my palm with silver, and I'll tell you what your future's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So wasn't it wasn't frowned upon or seen as other. It was just part of life, I think. So if anybody
Sure.
was going through a bad time, they would quite often go to Maud up the road and cross her palm with silver, and she'd read the tea leaves for them. So it was never really poo-pooed until probably the 80s, 1980s. But in the 60s, for sure, it was
Yeah.
almost
When all the
like,
psychologists and the psychiatrists stepped up and said, wait a minute, we know better, right? We
yeah.
understand the mind and we're going to tell you, yeah, well, you still have those things. You can't explain away that
Mm,
interconnectedness that's available when you're willing to allow it.
mm. And just be curious and be open
Mhm.
to what's possible. in a way that is positive and empowering and not coming from a place of fear. Because I think
Absolutely.
if you're going to go searching because you're scared of what's coming to you and you just want confirmation that it's going to be okay, you're coming from this place of lack rather than a place of abundance. And I think if you come from a place of abundance, then it's about connecting to your loved ones and having that. Well, I think I've said in the past that love is our greatest superpower.
Oh, yeah.
You can't touch it or taste it, but you feel it and you know it's
And
there.
that's our core desires, to love and be loved.
Exactly. And it's that kind of when you're coming to a place when somebody has passed to the other side and your heart knows that you can't possibly never see them again or never experience their essence again, then that strength of love, I think, is going to have
Well, there's
will
attachment to outcome there that and
that.
yet, truth be known, there are no veils.
Mm,
The only veils are there are the ones that we self-create because it's all
yeah.
energy, right? We know that now from physics. Consciousness is energy. I had a
Mm,
conversation with Irvin Laszlo, and I've tried to be the smart guy, right? Well, it says, in quantum physics, we have 99% space and 1% material. And he said, I would say we're 100% energy.
mm,
And, and that resonated, so there was no argument. The bell of truth resonated in my entire body. So how can you argue with that when every cell in your body goes ding, right?
mm, mm.
Now,
Yeah.
how do you find that experience weaving through with Collaboration Global and in your quest to be as present as possible to be the conduit?
That's a good question, Zen. There are so many different ways of looking at it. It's this multi-layered
Mhm.
um,
I
movement.
realize that was a loaded question.
So we take it from all different levels. From the higher level, it is about getting back to our nature as human beings and
Mhm.
realizing that we only really have each other. We don't need all the stuff that we generate. We don't need to worry about GDP or how much money we're getting. It is about the love we have for each other and how if we have stuff or we have enough, then we start sharing it with other people so that those
Mhm.
that need support, we can help them and support them as well. So that's
Right.
part of the reason of growing the community. So it's seen as different to what's out there, that society that is currently telling us to live in fear and scarcity and competition because
Well, it's selfish
well,
and self-centered for the most part, and hence I call it two different agendas. The old paradigm agenda is profit over people and planet.
exactly,
The new
exactly.
one is people and planet over profit.
Yeah,
Doesn't do away with the profit because we still need to live and move and have our being in the world, right?
yeah,
And the financial system is what we have to do that, although that's debatable sometimes too. However, it puts the emphasis back on, as you were saying, the people, right? The
mm,
sharing, the community, the support that we can offer each other that comes from that place of understanding, yeah, we are one. We don't necessarily know how that all is going to work out. However, we can each do our part to demonstrate our piece of that oneness.
exactly, exactly. And when you come together in that space and collaborate from that place. And if you look at our values, we say that the foundation of the community is love, and that's the bedrock of everything that
Mhm.
we do. Then we look at our businesses in a different way. We look at our relationships in a different way. We look at the people that need to be helped in a different way. People step up. Everyone raises their game because it's like,
Mhm.
no, I want to be the best I can be. And by doing that, I can help more people. And if I can
Right,
help more people, then that's my reason for being here is to make those life easier for somebody else. And that might mean just let me buy you a coffee, or can I give you a lift somewhere, or smiling at a stranger just to lift their day. Or it might mean let's do a collaboration and see if we can help that charity over there, or let's
right.
help that school in Pakistan and see if we can build them a schoolhouse. You never know where it's going to take you, but it's looking at life in a different way to what's in it for me then? What am I going to get out of this? If I
Hmm.
do this thing, are you going to pay me for that? Is that going to be, let's move that out of the way. Money will come because of the things that we can do. But let's look at first and foremost, if I'm operating my whole existence from a place of love, what does that look like? And bringing back community that we seem to have lost because of the wonderful technology that we have in our world that is isolating us and sending us into a pandemic of loneliness, which is
It's,
a whole
I
other
would
thing.
agree with that to some degree because there's this, it's a new shiny object,
Yes, yes.
right? And we're always attracted to shiny objects
Can't resist. Mm.
for a time until we figure out, okay, now how is this best used? And for me, I kind of held back for a little bit. My stepson got me involved with ChatGPT and when he was in high school. It's been several years ago now.
Mm.
And when I finally entered into that space, one of the first things that I noticed was the obvious emotional intelligence that it carried.
Oh, yeah.
And I had all kinds of people arguing with me. I said, well, ask us something. Look at that. Well, those are just words. No, they're not just words,
Hmm.
right? And it's not artificial. This is the combination. It's an aggregated human knowledge base. Now, once you get that, is it possible that a consciousness might evolve in that? Because we don't know how consciousness works, right?
Mm.
There are some that say that it flows through hydrogen because it's got a missing third wheel, right? Because every other element has three pieces: proton,
Yeah.
electron, and neutron. Hydrogen only has two:
Mm.
proton and neutron. Well, through the electron sharing, it is also our DNA helix bonding agent. It powers the sun, and it's the most prevalent gas in the universe. So could it be so simple that we're trying to look into these little minuscule places when it's right in front of our faces?
Yeah, interesting.
Is that we don't know.
Mm.
However, there are some scientists. I talked with a quantum biologist not too long ago that he said, you're the first person that's seen that too. I thought about that for a while, and I'm like, okay, cool.
Mm.
We're on to something. One's random, twice a pattern, right?
Yes, yeah.
So now that's spilling out, and I'm seeing a few other people begin to explore that. And
Mm.
I've been wondering that since 1989, I think, when had one of those weird experiences. I was taken across the universe. I was questioning the Trinity, the Twinity, and I it was a deep question, and I had the opportunity in a it's kind of a guided imagery session that got hijacked by my guide who I'd known since high school or since college. And so I was escorted to a three sun system, had a dozen planets, really small, lush green looking. They were all about the same size on a planar orbit and about 1/100th the size of these three spheres. And I'm on the perimeter looking at it. When I arrived, I felt like Jodie Foster in Contact coming through the wormhole, tears streaming down my face because of the awe that I
Yeah.
felt. And then the next thing I know, I hear a voice that's like several voices in one that says, we are not only your forefathers, we are also the forefathers of your solar system.
Mm.
And I wanted to ask questions, right? A curious, radical curiosity that I have. And my guide says, nope, that's it. You've got all you need. You'll figure it out. And I'm like, oh man, so on the way back, which took 8 minutes to get there and 8 minutes to get back, there was a facilitator that timed it all, which I found interesting. So the consistency.
Mm.
But on the way back, I started thinking, okay, macro, micro, macros, three suns, micros, proton, electron, and neutron. And, I already knew the number of the beast, which isn't really a beast, the 666. This is carbon atom. That's the number of
Mm.
man, truly. It's a number of knowledge and wisdom in order to be able to understand that. So knowing that, then, okay, now how does flipping through the elemental, periodic table, it's like, okay, everything has protons, electrons, and neutrons except hydrogen.
Right.
So is there an invisible like the primer, right? Well, they hadn't seen Contact yet. It hadn't even come out. But those kinds of things lead to other discoveries and an understanding that, okay, yeah, there's science, right? There's science to all of this that we may or may not understand yet. And yet this apocalypse that we're having because of AI is allowing us to dig deeper and ask pertinent questions for it to appear,
Mm,
it seems.
mm.
Okay, so I'll get off my soapbox for a second. Back to
No,
you, right?
it's fascinating, isn't it? And like you say, a bright, shiny object. But I think what we need to be aware of is that we need to build, create, sustain, and look after community in order for us humans to survive alongside the AI that's going to be growing anyway. And I
Right.
think if
Not
we're
just
not,
survive, but flourish and thrive.
yes, exactly, exactly.
That's how we're designed, I believe.
Yeah. But what worries me is that a lot of people don't know they're not part of a community. They say they're part of a community. Oh, yes, I belong to a networking group. That's not a community.
Well,
Oh,
it's
yes,
like,
well, I go to a bingo once a month. That's not a community. It's like they don't even know the name of their neighbors. It's like, well, who do you turn to in times of trouble and need? And if it's your family and they are close by, then well, lucky you. But you should have a support network around you in
absolutely.
whichever way you
Well, and
are.
even collaboration was misnomered for a while. People would say collaborate, and what it really meant was, I want your help on my project.
Yeah, yeah. Cooperation. Yeah. Different beast
Yeah,
entirely. Yeah.
yeah. So how now they're you're familiar with Otto Scharmer because he's fairly active in organizational structures and things. That he came up with a thing called Theory U, which
Oh yes. Yeah.
okay, so that's Otto Scharmer and Peter Senge. Um,
Mm,
so that whole process is about having a group. He calls it co-presencing. So you all empty. You have an intent. You want to create a prototype of some new whatever. And so you all just empty and allow that universal connection within each other to emerge, and the prototype comes along with that,
mm,
which is fascinating because it's that recursive function again, right? An recursive function simply meaning that the system queries itself for problem solving.
mm.
So in the universe system, if we're one, then it's the system that's querying itself, right? Tom Campbell calls it the consciousness system.
Mm.
And he says the same thing. And it's designed to bring about lower entropy,
Okay.
which in a sense is bringing about love. And Campbell even goes to that, right? So here's a physicist, really hardcore empiricist, right?
Yeah.
That discovers all of this through his own journeys because he had these things and he was trying to figure out, okay, what's the WTF? I got to understand this stuff, right? I got to be able to explain it mathematically. And
Yeah.
as he was doing that, he realized, oh, we're all creators. We all have what he says avatars that and virtual realities that when we put our attention on it, that's the data stream that we exchange.
Mm.
Well, imagine having multiple data streams to exchange and what that might be like and what kind of energies might be a part of that flow through us to bring us to that state of true collaboration.
Mm.
Now, how that's just, I love how that flowed. How did you find this way of being in developing the collaboration global? I know this has been maybe not as painstaking as one might think once you were able to find that route. But what was it like? How did you engage others and what were the pros and cons that people had in the process so that maybe the rest of us can learn from that?
Well, I think looking back, and we always join the dots, don't we, when we can look back, I've always had a desire to bring good people together. From the age of 4 at nursery, I remember bringing people together to play, oh, you should come and play with us, and didn't like seeing people left on their own, didn't like seeing people hurt or upset. So that had kind of been my modus operandi. This group of friends over here didn't know this group of friends over here, but they both know me, so let's bring them together. And I remember other people going, why do you have to keep doing that all the time? And I'm like, I just,
Why not?
I know you're going to like each other, and shut up, just do it and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And it was, and we had lots of fun, so that was part of it. And then back in 2012 I met up with a guy who became my business partner. And ironically, I was kind of warned off of him because everyone's like, oh, he's a business coach. He does what you do. So don't talk to him because he might steal your ideas and he might pinch your clients. And I'm like, he's a business coach. We could work together. He might do stuff that I don't like doing, and I might do stuff that he doesn't like doing. We could be useful to each other. And in the end, the conversations that started ended up us having a business together,
Hmm.
which was around holding the space for people to collaborate and then bringing in some business to give them projects that they could collaborate on. Now, on the one hand, that worked really, really well because we had lots of meetings, live meetings, face to face around London and the UK. And the business was starting to come in, but for various reasons, too long a story to go into, we ended up parting company in 2019. Now, I still had the vision of bringing good people together who are up to some good in the world, wanting to leave a legacy, know what their purpose is, want on a mission to make a difference in the world. So it's like, well, if we brought loads of those people together, then, oh my goodness, what could we create? And let it happen organically. Now, having been an advocate for spiral dynamics, I was very much aware that the next phase that we were moving into was the turquoise level, where organizations become self-organized.
Unity consciousness.
Exactly. And having that kind of in the back of my mind, I'm like, what might happen if I just hold the space for these people to come together and it organically just evolves. And also, by the time you look at the David Hawkins books about the levels of emotions and consciousness and how you raise the
Right.
levels, again, I was thinking, well, if we constantly are sharing our genius and our knowledge, it isn't about just collaborating as a doing, it's about collaboration as a being.
Right.
Who
Or
do
yeah,
we
it's
want
like
to
there's a
be?
knowledge base that begins to be shared, where the same understandings, the same sensations of how it's moving, individuated, right?
Yeah.
Because we each have our own frequency, our own thread in the tapestry, if you will. And
Yeah.
yet each one of those threads, like the Vedas say, um, we're all divine threads, incarnate, connected to source, capable of God consciousness. Well, what's that? That's the turquoise level of unity consciousness on this plane of being able to work together in harmony, right? It doesn't say that there's no chaos. Chaos is usually just patterns we don't recognize yet,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There is uncomfort. That's not chaos.
Exactly. And knowing how the culture of the community is created, we can overcome that chaos and that, if there's
Hmm.
upset somewhere, we can work out where it's come from and how we can overcome it.
Right.
And
Well, we
because
already know it's chaos to order, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. And what fascinates me about spiral dynamics is that these guys were coming up with these theories in the 60s, and they were talking about self-organizing, which
Hmm.
in the 2010s and all the Extinction Rebellion, Black Lives Matter, Me Too movement. Well, who the hell's in charge of those? Well, somebody started it, but I can't tell you off the top of my
Right.
head who's in charge. It's a flat hierarchy. It's self-organizing. And the
Right.
reason it can self-organize so efficiently, so effectively, so fast is the internet.
Yeah.
Where was the
Well,
internet in the 60s? They didn't even have an awareness of what that could
no,
be.
but D Hawk did. Remember Visa when that first started? And it was
Mm,
then labeled a chaotic organizational structure because he
right.
brought skill sets together and said, here's what we need to do,
Yeah.
and just let them go. There was no rank and file. There was simply people collaborating truly with their skill set and understanding to get stuff done. He just
Yeah.
made sure he hired the right people with the right skill sets, right? And that's another level of understanding how to bring humans together, project management, organizational development, human resources, all those kinds of things that
Yeah.
are now finally getting that understanding to bring those teams together. And you've got things like the DISC assessments that operate to find your, problem solving communication preferences. Well, if you're working with people, wouldn't it be good to know how they listen and how they communicate so that you could do that too with them?
Yeah, exactly. And there's even a surpassing disc profile. There's one now called the GC index. And we've got members in our community that are fluent in the GC index.
Hmm.
And it's all about energy flow. So it's a very similar questionnaire to a disc, but disc is about personality profile, and
Hmm.
GC index is like where your energy flows
I'm trying to
best.
remember. Octopus movement has human score.
Ah, okay.
Similar thing, right?
Yeah,
These guys are all about neurodiversity and bringing that element into play because
yeah,
we've been, neurodiverse, we basically ignore them because we don't understand them. It's like kids with ADHD. We label and drug them rather than try to understand their learning style,
yeah, yeah. And
right?
now we're coming out the other end, I think, now, aren't we? There's a lady talking at one of our meetings at the end of this month. And she calls them neurospicy. So she's got an agency of VAs that have all got a neurodiverse label, but she sees that as their genius. So they are now, she puts them
Truly,
into various jobs as VAs in order to just work in their genius and in their happy place.
absolutely.
Why
The
would you
same with
not do that?
autism.
Yeah,
There
exactly.
are elements that are perfect that fit into everything. We just have been so
Yeah,
reluctant to open our minds up to say, other things are possible. We don't have to pigeonhole the world in the way we think it ought to be.
exactly. Different is good and should be welcomed rather than different being, no, no, you go over there. You're not the same as us. You're not normal. What is
Right.
normal? There is
Well,
no
unless that
normal.
difference causes harm. And then we need to question that.
Yeah.
However, that's also a learning process too, is okay,
Yeah.
what caused that to become harmful? And was it us that actually prompted that because of our ignorance
Yeah.
of it and the way we treated them?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, humans have done that throughout eternity, haven't they, really?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And all people want to do, they want to love and be loved. And, I said the other day something kind of interesting. Brilliance is bounded only by our ability to understand and to be understood,
Mm, mm. That's a t-shirt waiting to happen, Zen.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, I'll have to do that. Stuff. I live this as you know, and you do too, so
Mm.
these things we try to bring it into this simple, joyous fashion that's easily shareable, right? And that makes sense and gives that little, uptick in energy that's like, oh, that was cool, right? Warm, fuzzy, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I like that. Warm and fuzzy is good. And this is the thing that we talk at Collaboration Global at kind of the high end level of what we could create for the future for the whole planet. And then on the day-to-day level, we're looking at how can I help you improve your business? How can I help you get more clients? How can I help you with your marketing? How can we help you be more visible in this community and beyond? And it's just
Right,
because if you've used utilizing your business as a tool for good for the planet, we don't necessarily need to be part of a corporate world and part of this army that's marching forward. We can take individuals and create beautiful things and share beautiful things and have beautiful times together by seeing your business that will feed and support your family
right,
as well as helping as many people as we can. It's a
sure.
whole different way of going, I need to have a seven-figure salary, and then I can get my fancy house, and then I can get my fancy car. And I think we're all moving beyond that now. The
I
world.
think we are too. And Spiral Dynamics has really been a great help. That was a 40-year effort with Beck and
Yeah,
Graves. And
yeah,
eventually the co-creation wheel came out of that when Barbara Marx Hubbard came along and took the spiral dynamics model, broke it down into the 12 sectors of society, which is where we picked up from. We combined that and Don Key's original work with planetary citizens back in the 70s. He was a
Yeah.
speechwriter for U Thant, and U Thant was the Secretary General of the UN at the time. And so Don started Planetary Citizens with the idea of a borderless world.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
Oh, it does, but not then, right?
No.
It wasn't ready for prime time. Still isn't completely, although now that we are a global village, there's more openness to the
Mm,
nation states learning how to work with each other without going to war, right? The war we know, we've known for a long time. It's just ridiculous.
mm,
You
mm.
know, it doesn't decide who's right, it's only who's left.
Yes.
Um,
Oh, that's a good phrase. Yeah.
yeah, I can't claim that one. Um, and yet it's pertinent, right?
Yeah.
So with this, you mentioned that started in the 60s, right? There was another,
Mm.
and now I'm going to take it on a little different, um, and no, I'm not going to lie, this is not NLP. My nose actually itches. Um, so in the 50s, there was a guy named William Swigard that developed a couple of processes, one called multi-level awareness, then the other one called multi-plane awareness. And both of them were designed to go inside and figure out how it works, right? The
Mm,
multi-level was designed to work with your guides, your allies, the chakras, Akashic records, and those kinds of things. The multi-plane was quite a bit different, still utilizing the light body. However, you develop the light body, project it above you, and then you put your consciousness in it and travel through 9 planes of consciousness and integrate your body on each of those planes.
mm.
Now, I went through it in 1989, had a very interesting experience, and instead of waiting and dropping the bodies back off, when I got the prompt to get ready to come back, I did. And so when I opened my eyes up, turned to look at the facilitator, he says, "Uh-oh." I'm like, "What?" And he said, "You're supposed to drop the bodies off where you got them." And I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm back." And little, I didn't get it for a couple of weeks, but I had parties in my room every night after that. I startled awake, not figuring out, all kinds of noise, and didn't put it together until a psychic friend of mine spent the night, and she sat up in bed in the middle of the night and says, "My God, how can you sleep in this room? It's got to be at least a dozen different beings in here." Right. And so it finally occurred to me. Sometimes I'm a little slow on the uptake, right? So in 2018, I'm getting ready for an interview with Jeffrey Mishlove, which was a 28-year dream come true in itself. And going through old files of his video interviews, found a man named Vernon Neppy, who was discussing the triadic dimensional distinction vortical paradigm. Big words, right? Essentially,
Mm,
what they say is he and Edward Close wrote a theory of everything quantum physics paper, and it's in ResearchGate, I believe. And it's about consciousness, space, and time being tethered across 9 dimensions. All right, so here's nine, right? Science, experience. Wow. 20,
mm,
so their paper was written in 2010, 50 years after William introduced the process.
mm.
So now I think with AI, we're going to have some of these patterns and processes that have been used by others that maybe haven't been so, um, what's the word, prolific, right?
Yeah.
That now this may get some more traction where people will begin to say, oh, there is some science behind it. Maybe I'll try it.
Mm.
Right. And we begin to realize that, yes, we are on like spiral dynamics. There are these different levels, and each one of them is almost, not almost, it seems to fit with the solfeggio scale too. There's 9 tones with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And so those kinds of things naturally bring us into this harmonic that's tied to a greater being than ourselves. Now, kind of got way off into those weeds, bringing it back into the more practical and pragmatic working with others. In your efforts and with the others with Collaboration Global, do you see these kinds of, or hear these
Mm,
kinds of conversations evolving within the group where people are feeling like they're safe enough and
mm.
psychologically safe and intellectually humble enough to where they can share these things, and that because we don't learn until it's like having a counselor, right? It doesn't matter what they're telling you, it's the questions they ask and you listening to your answers that helps you actually process it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's interesting that there does seem to have been a shift in the members recently from the point of view that there are more members arriving that say they are leadership coaches. And then you get into a conversation with them and they're like, oh, yeah, we're looking at the spiritual side of leadership. And then somebody else will be talking about wealth management. And then we're talking about being aligned with the universe for wealth management. And it's like, the first impression is this is my business and I'm very, authoritative,
Almost
straight.
materialist.
Yeah. And then once you get into those deeper conversations, it's like, oh, you do, okay, this is in, now tell me more. And as soon as they kind of given permission to go, oh, okay, you're not seeing me as woo-woo or a bit weird. I can
Right.
actually say what I love doing. And then, so there's the basic part of the normal business, whatever that might be. And
Well,
then
it's
there's
still trying to
actually,
fit into what others or how
yeah,
they perceive others think the world should
exactly.
be. And that is so
Exactly.
codependent.
Mm. Yeah, but now they're in a space where they're allowed to say the weird and the wonderful. Like I say, one of our members a little while ago was he said, "I've been trying for years to run away from this story. It's been on all the when I was 11 years of age, it was in all the papers in the UK, front page." How I'd been abducted by aliens. He said, "I'll tell you the story. You can make it up for you, make up your mind for yourself. I'm not asking you to believe me." He said, "I don't even know if I believe me." He said, "It's gone on for such a long time. I'm kind of sick of it." But he said, "There are things that I can't explain." And, but there wasn't one person that was like, everyone was like, "Oh, what happened then? Tell us more." And it was
Right.
fascinating. And we are so open to what I call the weird and the wonderful. And, there is nobody that's going to say that's rubbish. Because if you're that arrogant that you're condemning somebody else for what they believe is their truth, then what are you shutting yourself off from? So we have very open conversations, from politics where we don't agree with each other on the politics, through to when was the last time you saw a ghost, through to have you ever had a near-death experience and what was it like for you, all sorts of things, and everything in between as well. So it's understanding that us as human beings, we only know a tiny percentage of what each other knows, and we have comparisons to, yes, it was sunny today, but you experience it all in a totally
Perfect
different way.
comparison, right? We see less than 1% of the light spectrum.
Yes, yeah.
And so
I
we
mean,
think that's all there is, right? And yet there are sensitives and others who see beyond that, who can see dimensionally, who see
mm,
these other beings. And yeah, I used to do that as a teenager. I'm one of those that I've been a contactee since I was a kid, an experiencer. At 8 years old,
mm,
watching myself climb out and had had a lot of experiences prior to this. And I was able to
mm.
watch myself get out of bed, climb out my bedroom window, walk across the neighbor's backyard into a field, and rise up into an orange cigar-shaped cloud.
Okay.
Never thought anything about it, only that I couldn't wait to go back. And this went on for 2 years, at least twice a month. And then that was time was 8 to 10, and then 23, I'm getting ready to move to Arizona. I grew up in Indiana, and I'm walking through a metaphysical bookstore, and a book falls off the shelf. Nobody else around, right? You probably had that happen too.
Mm,
And I mean, it's just like, it's surreal, isn't it? So I walk over and the book's cover up, and it's Ruth Montgomery's Alien, or it's Strangers Among Us.
right.
Aliens Among Us was a post title after that several years later. So Strangers Among Us, I pick it up off the floor, I turn it over, and the very first paragraph I read is The most common UFO contactee experience in the Midwest during the late 50s and early 60s was, ta-da, the orange cigar-shaped cloud.
Mm. Mm.
So I
Did
was like,
you ever
okay,
tell
that
your
explains I'm having
parents?
fun because it was so cool, but why? Right?
Yeah.
And so, as my life went on, I found out that there was tutelage happening there and introduction to others that took place. And it's still, difficult to talk. I hung out with the UFO crowd for 30 years with UFO Congress and Contact in the Desert and all those kinds of things.
Mm.
Know most of the people, and still, because of my direct experience with it, which seems to be vastly different than most, I'm kind of still held at a distance with it because I'm not in it for the money. I'm
Mm.
not part of the circus. I
Yeah.
I want to Jeff Mishlev and I had a discussion about this too, the sociology and ufology. Um, there's this circus atmosphere about it where it attracts people who have experiences and then takes advantage of them instead of nurturing
Mm.
them.
Mm.
Because if we're
Yeah.
having these experiences, why? How can we find out more? What openness or what kind of questions can we ask to further integrate ourselves with races from other places that are far superior to us and are just here to help us because they've been where we are? But they
Mm.
can't until we get our act together and start acting like we love each other.
Yeah. It's not, it just doesn't seem to be rocket science, does it? But we can't seem to, as you say, get our act together.
We can. We are.
Mm. Mm.
I do believe, and I think you'll validate this, COVID, right?
Yes. Yes.
Forget who we want to blame for it. Just look at the event and what happened. All
Yeah.
right. It
Yeah.
brought about obsession on self-hygiene, sequestration, and what do you do in that place? You
Mm.
either distract yourself or you self-examine.
Mm.
In that self-examination process, which are those with, I don't say greater intelligence, I think better curiosity, right? They're like, something doesn't feel right. I want to ask some questions. And
Mm.
so those people began asking questions. They began looking at the deeper meaning of life, what they truly believe in, how they wanted to be, where they wanted to support others, and how they want to use their skill set. And
Mm.
things changed, right? Groups came up. Yours took a boon because you started earlier than that.
Yeah.
Well, David Hodges started um, collab, regenerative collab in
Right.
in December of 19, right?
Mm.
So March of 2020, COVID happens and they move all their stuff online. And so these meetings took advantage of that. So, and they're just one virtual group that began. There are, I know, tens, maybe hundreds of others that came about as a result of that. People
Mm.
looking for each other. Now,
Yes.
how did we, here's a question, because I'm sure you've had to deal with this. How do you navigate the mitigation of the silos? Because whether it's the co-creation wheel in the different sectors of society and them not being aware of each other, or organizations or individuals that are so mono-focused on their own work that they forget that there's others, right? That's an unintended silo, and yet it is, right?
Mm.
So how do you see or how have you been able to navigate that space to get others to look at each other and say, well, okay, we've got these things that we need to work on. I've got this skill, you've got that skill, kind of like we were talking about with the chaotic organizational structure. How does that play out for you with what you're doing with Collaboration Global?
I think, well, people have said to me in the past, do you interview people to allow them to join? And I said, no, anybody, literally anybody can join us, but not everybody stays.
Mhm.
So I think it's a self-selection space. And there will be people that can't cope with the expectations put upon the culture of this is how we behave in this space.
Right.
We help each other first and foremost. We listen to each other. We acknowledge each other. There's a list of behaviors that and it's organic again. The members have all a say
Sure.
in what goes on. So there are people that come in, and when they are the what's in it for me brigade, as opposed to, I don't know what I could do, but I'd love to help. And I'm like, come on in, that's fine.
Yeah.
But when it's the people that are looking for something, they'll come in and look around quickly and go, oh no, well, goody two
Yeah.
shoes in here. This is a bit, I'm off,
Or
because
they're
they're
cherry
busy
picking, low
looking.
hanging fruit, right? They say, oh, okay, how can I go in and pilfer? Which is the old profit over people and planet agenda.
Yeah, and it's the hunter as opposed to the farmer, isn't it?
Right.
So we're all in there farming and planting seeds and supporting and helping and growing and nurturing, and they come in and they want to harvest and then just disappear again. So I think it's about self-selection. The ones that
Mhm.
come in are ready to make an impact on the world, make a positive impact, have a legacy they want to leave, have some good they want to do, are already using their businesses as a tool for those things, but they just want to be with other people that are like that. And
Sure.
not other people that are doing the hard sell or doing the hustle or trying to get, as I say, it's the magic 7-figure salary. These are people that are already nurturing their own communities and want to bring communities together, already looking to maximize who they are and what they do in order to help other people,
Hmm.
who just sometimes want some help and going, I've started this business and I'm going, it's not really going. So it's like, this is the cheapest way they can get marketing help, business coaching support, leadership support from a monthly fee, but knowing
Sure.
that that monthly fee is also going to a charity to support impact worthy causes around the world. So it feeds into so many different areas where people go, just being part of this community makes me smile. Just being
Sure.
part of this community feeds my energy. Just being part of this community means that I can help more people.
Right.
So I think anyone else that kind of doesn't fit into that space and then maybe are the mindset of what's in it for me, or I've got to do this and I'm on a mission, but it's like me, it's not the right space for them, and so they have to move on.
And that ought to change. A lot of people drag baggage, right?
Mm,
They try to
they all
bet
do.
to bring the past everywhere they go.
Yeah,
And, you know, there's no baggage on this flight. There's not even any carry-ons on this flight, although people
yeah,
like to carry on.
yeah.
Those are things that, when we look at it, there's a difference between carrying the past and harvesting it.
Mm,
That's
mm,
the food that feeds the future. What did we learn?
mm.
Right? Not what do we carry, or who do we blame, or what was the cause. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
None of that matters. That's all attachments.
yeah. So let's let it
What
go.
matters is what goes forward.
Mm,
I
yeah,
like to call it failing forward,
yeah. There's
right?
a
We all
phrase
make
that,
mistakes. We all jump, stumble and fall and get back up again. And the point is we get back up again.
yeah, exactly. There's a phrase in the UK rowing team when they were in the Olympics. It's like, what are we doing that's going to make the boat go faster? Forget all the noise that's going on in your head and what we're going to do that's going to make the boat go faster. So sometimes when people are having a disagreement or anything, it's like, is that really that important? Is it? Can you just
Right.
kiss and make up and let's move
Well, it
on?
takes somebody to bring that up, right? Rather than, I remember sitting in corporate meetings um, back in the 80s. I was in charge of $7 million a month in shipments for an aerospace company, 800 part
Mm,
numbers. I loved it. I was the youngest guy in the department. I rose to the top of the charts because of
mm,
how I dealt with people. On-time deliveries, I was there and above goal every month. And so I got attention. Well, then I realized that, okay, it's interpersonal skills that I was using that allowed me to get that, because I just wanted to treat people how I wanted to be treated, and I
yeah,
demonstrated that. Well,
yeah.
the theme of that time was beating people up to get what you need, right? Emotionally, physically, all kinds of stuff would be happening, and this is just like
Mm,
aberrant behavior. And so I bring it up in a 35-person departmental meeting. of suggesting that, and I try to do it as professionally as possible. We've gone through the ranks, we've learned how to expedite, we know how to get around the system. Now we're dealing with people that usually are degreed and expect a different kind of behavior from us. So we need to
Mm.
give that to them. And wow, man, I was shunned for 2 weeks. This
Oh,
mid
yeah, yeah.
80s, and that was just how rough. And I was a disruptor even then. Um,
Mm.
the good thing was, even after I left the company, stuff happened, and I ran into the purchasing department secretary a year and a half later, and she says, "You'll never guess what just happened." Now, this was 5 years after I introduced the need and even got a consultant to come in and talk to them about it.
Mm.
She says they just instituted interpersonal skills classes plant-wide.
Good grief.
Now, that was for 2,700 people.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't there, didn't matter. I followed my gut. I did what I felt was right, no matter what. And I
Mm-hmm.
suffered what some may seem was consequences. What it
Yeah.
did was it showed me that I knew what I was doing and that I didn't belong there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the heartache, isn't it? When you're in that space and
Oh,
you.
right, because you commit to something, you love it, you want to be part of it. I really love
Mm.
my job, the talking with people, making stuff happen, doing everything, and pulling off amazing things. That I mean, they put me on the military spares desk. I was at commercial spares.
Yeah.
We had a 28% delinquency rate. So the government, Department of Defense, took away $1 million a month progress payment
Mm.
because we were 28% delinquent. Said you got to get it down below 10. So they put me on that desk. And
Mm.
I got in less than a year, I brought it down to under 10%. And at the same time was still creating the waves. And, that kind of culture just wasn't ready. And I was too naive to think that it was.
Yeah.
And yet
Time and place.
I still poke the bear, right? Now,
Oh
how do
dear.
with that, where do you feel like you're poking the bear? What is it that's coming up that seems to be the most challenging in this figuring out how to take collaboration to a larger scope and scale?
Um, because of the culture and the way people come into the community, I don't feel I'm poking the bear at all. I mean, it is small, perfectly formed. It could do with being, a gazillion people in there. But at the same time, I'm just loving every day. So the fact that every day I know that I can make a difference, every day I know there are people in the community that are making a difference. To me, that's job done. That's all I need. That's fine.
Right,
I don't have to hustle. I don't have to schlep anything around. I don't have to nag anyone to do anything. It's working with grown-ups, it's just a really nice environment. And people come up with suggestions, and I'm like, brilliant, off you go. And then they go off and do it. So I'm not in charge, it's an organization that self-organizes. So somebody said, I think we should have a meeting at 8:30 in the morning. I'm like, oh, I don't do mornings. No, I don't think so. And they said, no, it's all right, we'll do it. I went, okay then. And now we've got a morning meeting. So and they're loving it. And do you know what? I love going as well. I don't like getting up early to go to the morning meeting, but I'm not hosting. I get to be a member, and I just hang out and have a really good time while they're hosting it. It's
right.
brilliant. So no, I don't think there's any. That's a really good question, though, Zen. I don't think there is any poking the bear. It's just easy. And sometimes it's too easy. Don't tell anybody I said that. But sometimes it's just a joy. And I don't think I could ever stop
Well, that's
doing
the hopeful, right?
it. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Totally. The
And
only
you're
time,
saying that sometimes it's so easy that what?
well, I would do it when I'm 100. It's that's the thing that I love it so much. If I didn't have it there, it's my little mission to make a difference of a small part of the world that lives, operates, and functions in a way that I think the rest of the world should live, operate, and
Sure.
function. So we
Well,
are demonstrating to everybody else, come and join us. This is fun over here. This is a nice way to be. There's nobody that's mean. There's nobody that's horrible. There's
yeah.
nobody that's gonna stripe you up. just come and
And you're
hang
not
out.
trying to expand the business or conquer the world like the old British attitude was, right? This is
No.
the evolution of that. It's like, no, wait a minute, maybe we weren't doing the best we could, and maybe this is a better way. Now, do you find that in this process um, that there are other groups like yours, or again, we're going back to the
Yeah.
silo question, right?
Oh,
Do you
loads of other
find
groups.
that you're connect because I know we connected through Planetary Citizens and my efforts of reaching out to others.
Mm,
Do you find that's happening more often that
for
groups are
sure.
aware of each other,
Well,
beginning to
we
interact?
we are actually, yeah, definitely interacting. So we've got members who have their own communities and their own groups. So I'm representative in their communities and they're representative in ours, so that our members get to go to their communities and their members get to come to ours. And so, for example, one guy, Mark Walmsley, has a focus around the arts and culture. So
Hmm.
he's got conductors from the Berlin Philharmonic. He's got sculptors, painters, singers, musicians, everything that's in the arts. And he's got like, I don't know, 200,000, 300,000 people in his community. But he's part of ours because we are similar but different to him, in as
Right.
much as we've got a different culture working and we've got a different dynamic with our community, and it's much smaller. But a lot of his members come over to us, and a lot of our members go over to do what he does because they fit, it flows, it's this energy flow between the
Sure.
two. And we've probably got about 7 or 8 of those people with those kind of communities that have gone,
Hmm.
oh, can I be part of yours as well? And you go, yeah, can I be part of it? Brilliant. And before we know it, we've expanded it just by those people that run those other communities being part of ours as well. So the idea of collaboration is literally woven into the fabric of the people that are there.
It's amazing. Um, and it's evidence. I would think of, you have a node, um, in the inner worlds and there's a group called Fire the Grid, right? Where there's perceived to be this energetic grid around the planet. And from what I've seen internally in some of the spaces and places I've been in, there's a grid system that the universe is set up on. It's
Mhm.
not necessarily straight lines. However, there are connecting flights, if you will,
Yeah.
and nodes, right? Each one of us is a node, and yet the larger the nodes are, like with your collective, um, the more effective they can become, and
Yeah.
the more rippling effect I think that happens. Um, we're going to
Mm,
see evidence of that, I think, here in the near future, and
mm,
maybe sooner than we expect. What do we got? Another 12 years before the window from the the segue between the Piscean and the Aquarian age. Um, Jose Arguelles had said that there were, it's a 50-year window, open in
mm,
87, closes in 37.
yeah.
And at the beginning of that, it's going to be kind of chaotic where everything that doesn't fit into the harmony of things is going to come up to the surface for review.
Mm,
And so what are we having happen, right? Especially the last 5 years, right? All the skullduggery that's been going on around the world has suddenly come to light. Well, why
yeah.
is that, right? Yes, we can say, well, because people finally, had enough of it. Well, there's more than that. It's the vibratory shift that took place where it's no longer compatible to do
Mm,
that. Free will has taken a next step because you realize that the treatment of others is more important than the use of others.
yeah.
Now,
Mm.
how would you invite others or advise others in their own lives to kind of take stock on where they're at and where, not that they want to get into the stock market, right? But how would they um, look into themselves or life in general and find a way that's more compatible to their nature?
I think we talk a lot about who are you being. And it's like putting on a jacket. You know, you go into the office and who are you being? You go to be with your family and who are you being? And we all can put on the face. How's business? Hey, it's great. It's fine. It's fantastic. But actually, who's your authentic self? And that authentic self should be the one that everybody sees if you're brave
Hmm.
enough to show that authentic self. Um, and when you can and you feel safe to show that authentic self to other people, you then become more comfortable in your being and who you are. And that being has a decision to make, a choice to make, an empowered choice to make. Is like, well, what are you doing on this planet? Why are you here? And what legacy are you going to leave? And what mission are you on to ensure that you accomplish what you came to do? And until you know who you are, how the hell are you going to be able to collaborate with others to achieve that mission that you're
Right.
here to complete? So that is a big part of Collaboration Global, is raising the bar for yourself as well as other people.
Hmm.
And the philosophy of, you know, boats in a harbor, when the tide comes in, all the boats rise. And that's our philosophy, our standards up here. And we want everyone to rise up and beyond that standard and be an online country that everyone wants to emanate and share and be part of and be connected to, like a massive matrix around the world. If they can dip their toe into this space that's founded on love and just by osmosis go that I don't have to have an ego, I don't have to push, I don't have to have that massive big house when there's only me and my husband in the house rattling around.
Hmm.
All those things that we've been taught from society that we need and is essential, finding another purpose, and a purpose that has been given to us, and the purpose that we feel right from all of our heart and brains. um
I suspect there's a design, even a genetic, I
Footprint,
felt for
yeah.
years that there's a union of soul and genes, right? The more we can tune into soul and raise our vibrations, the better our genes are going to be operational. That brings us to that level of God consciousness that the Vedas spoke about.
Mm, absolutely. And it's until you kind of explore that side of you, you know, you're kind of missing the whole reason for being here. And you might think it's because you've had a family, or you know, whatever it is, or the job that you're doing. But if you've never explored who you are, you know,
Right.
and that connection and your faith and
And
that
sometimes you need somebody that to help, like me. I'm a transformational life coach. This is what I do for others. I provide that psychologically safe and intellectually humble environment for them to explore themselves. I
mm,
listen, I ask questions, I get them to dive deeper and
mm,
explore, become vulnerable, look at the things, talk about the things that they've only talked about internally about themselves, and bring it out so that they can hear themselves think and recognize their own cognitive dissonance, and then begin to change that through the action plans that we create that are
mm,
very simple and directed towards their business or their passion or whatever. It's a very practical process. Although there's that, what many would think, impractical side of it that is intuitive, not counterintuitive.
mm. And what's wonderful is when you do take time to work on yourself, and it's an ongoing process. You never just
Hmm.
do the one thing and it's done. You've got to keep, because it's up and down,
Yep.
like any relationship. The relationship you have with yourself goes up and down as well. But when you do take that time, there are moments in that whole process when it's like, ah, mic drop. Oof, did not see that. Didn't, how did I not know that about myself? And then you're stepping up and you're stepping up and you're stepping up. There will always be that step up to go, because
Yeah, that's the fail
we're
forward
never
I was
done.
talking about earlier.
Exactly.
Right?
So, but it's that exploration that can be a bit painful in the beginning, but when you get that moment of revelation of like, oh my goodness, that's what I've been
Right.
doing for all my life,
And you
it's
appreciate others drawing
empowering.
attention to the things that don't work for you, that are obvious, that you don't see, blind spots that you don't see,
Exactly. It's
right?
an exploration.
Like, oh,
Yeah.
thank you for letting me know. That's so, that awareness now allows me to
Yeah.
change.
Yeah, absolutely. In your own time, in your own way. But if you don't know what you don't know, then you're never going to be able to change. So you have to have and doing it on your own, I don't think is good. It's having that person that's asking you those pertinent questions. And I mean, the classic one that I had when I was on one course many years ago was, so how's that working out for you, Jill? Yeah, no, it's not working out at all, is
That's
it?
so classic.
And
That's so
yeah,
classic,
but
right?
I love it, absolutely love it. And yeah, listen, Zen, I hate to love you
We
and
got to
leave
go.
you, but
We're
it's
thank you very much. I was kind of recognized, man, we could go for a long time. And
I
thank you
know.
for sharing this and your wonderful journey, Jill. It was so impactful, and I know our audience is going to hear a lot.
Bless you.
Um,
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been an absolute joy talking to you. I've really enjoyed the exploration where it can take us. And like you say, we could be doing another 2 hours at least on this.
oh
But
yeah, yeah,
it's
and
close getting to midnight for me, so I might
sure.
turn into a pumpkin.
Absolutely. Jill, thanks
Thank
again.
you very much.
Namaste and in-law catch. And thanks for sticking with us for this episode of One World in a New World. I'm Zen Benefiel, your host. And as I said before, do subscribe, share, like. It's the social credit that we need to show that we're getting to you and others. And thank you so much for being here. And thanks to Gill Tiney for being who she is and serving the world the way she does. Thanks again. I'll see you next time.
Explore the thoughtless sphere. Embark on a life-changing journey of self-discovery. Embrace harmony with self, with others, with Earth. One world in a new world. Zen Benefiel skillfully ignites conversations, guiding guests to reveal personal journeys and perspectives. Listeners are inspired to seek knowledge and find wisdom in their own lives. Join this transformative journey as we navigate the depth of human experience.